Everybody, welcome to Homestead Fairbanks.
Since it's been so miserable outside and cold, in January and February we just don't really get out that much. So what we've been doing is going through and organizing and stuff since it's the first of the year.
So we buy our food in bulk because it's really just the cheapest. If you check the stores lately, you don't know why people buy in bulk. But Melody was very good at researching, and we use Mylar bags, which we have some of right over here. And instead of having 50 pounds of sugar or 50 pounds of flour sitting around getting ready to soak up moisture, or the dogs get into it, or people have rodents. We don't have too much of the problem of it in Alaska, but people do. You could put this in a Lowe's bucket because these are airtight, they block out all the light, everything's good. Yeah. However, but if you did need to really use your preps over a long period of time, you pay the same price for a food grade bucket as a Lowe's bucket. And we can take and put meat in this, we can go and put our produce in it, we can do a lot of other things with a food grade bucket. So even though we don't necessarily need them if we're packaging in a Mylar, I mean, this is a prep by itself. I mean, having a bucket and something you can put food, moose meat, caribou meat, fish in, and not worry about it being tainted, it's an awesome thing to have. So you might as well just spend the same amount of money basically for a food grade bucket as you would a Lowe's bucket. Okay, so let's get ready to do the beans, and if you hear some golden retrievers growling or barking, that's what we live with every day.
So anyway, let's get these beans opened up.
Yep. So normally one of us will hold the bag and the other one will just fill it up. So today I'll hold it and Mel will fill it up. And these are 1 gallon bags. We find that works pretty good for us. I'm not for sure salt is necessary in a 1 gallon thing.
Yeah, for herbs and stuff like that, I like to cut these in half and reseal them, and we'll show you how to reseal them. Okay, so you think that's enough?
Yeah.
So you want to leave about inch and a half, maybe even 2 inches.
Head space there.
Yeah, you don't want to compromise the bag at all when you seal it all up. Another step that we do is we put an oxygen absorber in it because that will absorb all the oxygen out of the bag, and it'll seal up like what we have over here.
Longer. So yeah, this is pinto beans from 11/2019, and as you can see, I'll get a little closer to the camera. See, all of this vacuum that's from it is from an oxygen absorber, just like she's using. There's different size oxygen absorbers. We just buy the one that's sized for the gallon bag. We get everything from Amazon, so it's all pretty easy to come by. This is what they look like when we get them. They come in a bag like that. But as you cut this bag, obviously it's going to be exposed to oxygen.
Yep, so I always put them in a mason jar and seal it up really good, and they seem to last for a long time. So this is another kind of hack that we've done or come up with. You can get really expensive with these sealers for the Mylar bags, and if we were doing something that was more on a bigger scale, then we would think about purchasing something like that. But I decided to get a hair straightener, the cheapest one I could find. They're not cheap, it was $50 at Costco. And I didn't realize that you can spend $150 on a hair straightener. But we keep this specifically for sealing up these Mylar bags, and they do great. So, and they have different temperatures on them, so you can get the right temperature to seal this thing up. So you want to go ahead and do it?
Yeah, it works really, really well. So the reason we got the flat iron is because of how well it works. So I just take and I fold it over 90 degrees, kind of tight, and then I just clamp, all the way down, and I leave just a little area at the end that now I can go back and
squeeze it out.
And we squeeze as much air as we can out. the very end, and then Melody will just clamp it right there. And when you see the price of these Mylar bags, just know that when we bring, like, when we open that next bag of beans up that we're not saving, we cut straight across the line and we just reuse the bag. Yeah. It just becomes this much shorter.
Yeah.
You can multiple uses of these bags. So normally what we'll do is we'll go through and do a whole bunch of them.
Another important thing to do, because I wasn't very good at this when we first started, is labeling. Because I would get all this done and put it in a back bucket, and then later on when I would come through to find what I needed, I'm like, what the heck is this? So you don't want to have to reopen. So it's good to have an excellent labeling system.
Very important for sugar, salt, and flour. Not as important for beans and rice, because you can kind of tell what they are from outside the bag. But very important for beans. I'm sorry. Sugar, salt, and flour.
Point out too that the reason why I use the smaller gallon bags is because in the beginning when I started doing this, I was using the 5-gallon bags, which are much bigger, and they'll fill a 5-gallon bucket. But when you go to open up a 5-gallon bucket of flour and you only need a couple cups, then what do you do with all of that? And when we open these up, these smaller ones, we know that they'll fit in our containers on the kitchen counter that we would use for everyday use. So it's just easier, and you don't have to keep reopening and resealing and exposing the food to more oxygen.
And it's really not that big of a difference in price. Like 20 of these is like the price of 6 or 7 gallon bags. So it's basically the price of the Mylar.
Yeah.
All right. You're gonna put it on. Let's get on this. And this is what we do. We typically just, we do an assembly line. When one person does the same task until we get all of it. And we learned to use the large measuring cup bit because trying to pour flour out of a 50-gallon bag or a 50-pound bag is not that easy. And we were making quite a big of a mess. So, you know, beans, we could probably just use the bag. Salt, we could use the bag. It's really the flour. And we don't have access to bulk cornmeal in Alaska. So, unfortunately, the only real flour we're saving in bulk is all-purpose flour. I'll do a video later and we'll be able to later on in the next week or so I'll show you how to make just some homemade bread, rustic loaves, and it's not real hard. At first I started out following recipes to a T, and then I just kind of learned what it looks like, what it feels like, but in another video.
Okay, so we're going to do an oxygen absorber.
In each.
And you can start working on those. I'm going to open these. Try to do it as quickly as possible and get it sealed up. Ah! There you go. Okay, so a 25-pound bag of beans is roughly about 4 of these bags. So that's a lot of beans. So just so you know, it takes a little while to absorb the oxygen out of these. So we just throw them in the buckets like this, and then when we open up the bucket and we get a bag now. All of these are sealed pretty tightly. So it just takes a while, and it doesn't happen overnight, or it doesn't happen right away.
But definitely a good trick is to seal almost all of it and leave an end just slightly unsealed so you can squeeze that air out instead of it being everywhere.
Yeah.
The hardest thing to do is, again, flour is by far the hardest thing that we store and buy in bulk.
So also too, you can buy a really expensive machine that sucks all the air out of it. But if, you know, like I said, we're not doing high quality quantities of it. So it's just better if we do it this way. It's much more economical for our situation.
Yeah, and it's not really that hard to get the air out in here. And this is really easy stuff. I mean, the bags are not expensive. The oxygen absorbers are not expensive. You just need to buy in bulk, and you need to figure out what size you want to use. And once you figure that out, it's super simple. And then when the rest of the world's looking for pinto beans, you'll be sitting on a couple of years supply.
Lots of protein.
Alright, just
So usually we can get about 5 of these bags in a 5-gallon bucket.
but it's not perfect.
It's not perfect, but we want to pack as much in as we possibly can because that's space.
And you can put other things in here, like lots of times if you got herbs, spices, anything else you're doing small packages of it, you can throw it in.
Yep. And I buy bulk pasta. So sometimes I'll take it all apart, each package apart, and I'll throw a package in here because there's space in here. But another important thing to do for labeling, and maybe that's just me, but label what is in the bucket on the outside of the bucket, because the more you open this up and the more you expose it to oxygen, the food doesn't last as long. So I just make sure everything's sealed up. If I already know what's in it and I don't need it, then there's no reason to open it up.
Just every time you open it, there's more chances of something going wrong. Especially when you get to moving around, because you can...
How many pinto beans do we have?
4. Because these Mylar bags, they're significantly tougher than your normal vacuum seal bags, which we also do vacuum seal stuff too. These things are notorious after you seal them for just the slightest little nick and the vacuum's gone. But these are tougher, but they can cut on each other. I mean, these corners are actually quite sharp, and they can actually, a corner of one bag can poke a hole in another bag if it's in the exact perfect conditions. So like Melody said, we try not to move them that much after we do them, and it's really the easiest thing to do. Just, you know what's in it, you grab the one you need, and you're done. And these lids, they have a little rubber seal around them and stuff. So like I said, you don't need them for keeping stuff in a Mylar bag per se, but I mean, I don't know how much they're over your neck of the woods is, but where we live, it's, you know, $6, $7 for a Lowe's bucket, and it's $6 or $7 for a food grade bucket. So we just buy the food grade buckets.
You don't want to pack these too heavily.
No.
Well,
That's as much as we're getting in that one.
That's it. So
the buckets idea is not perfect. Some people use Sterilite containers. Some people use large tough boxes. People use all kinds of things.
So when you have a ton of food grade buckets filled with food, then you want to go by the date that you have labeled on it and use the oldest first, because the food will eventually go bad.
All right, well, thank you guys for tuning in to Homestead Fairbanks. Hope you learned something today or picked up some tip, trick, something. If you already do this, that's great. Maybe we do it a different way, then you might want to use some of our stuff. That's about it. Anything you'd like to say, Mel?
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.